Welcome to Monk's Temple. Before we explore any teachings, I invite you to do something simple. Just notice your breath. Don't change it. Don't make it deeper. Just observe it. Is it shallow? Is there a pause at the top? A longer release? Just observe, like a scientist witnessing a phenomenon for the first time. Also notice the quality of your mind. Is it calm? Is it busy? Is there a low hum of anxiety you've become so accustomed to that you don't even realize it's there? Just notice. No judgment. This simple act of noticing your own experience without immediately trying to change it is the first step towards something the Buddhist tradition calls wisdom. But this wisdom is not what you might think. It is not the accumulation of facts. It is something far more intimate and transformative. Let me tell you a story about two people who worked in the same office. The first person, let's call her Sarah, was considered exceptionally intelligent. She had 2 advanced degrees. She could read complex reports and instantly identify key points. In meetings, colleagues looked to her for answers, and she almost always had them. Sarah knew things. The second person, let's call him David, had no advanced degrees. He worked in the mailroom. His job was simple: sort mail, deliver it, make small talk. David was not considered intelligent by office standards. But when you talked to him, he was completely there. He didn't glance at his phone. He didn't look over your shoulder. He just listened. And when he spoke, his words were simple but exactly what you needed to hear. One day, the company faced a crisis. A major deal was falling apart. Sarah was in the emergency meeting, firing off solutions, analyzing data at lightning speed. She was so deep in her analysis, so identified with her own thoughts, that she didn't notice the human beings around her. She didn't see the fear on the CEO's face or the exhaustion on her colleagues' faces. She just saw the problem. David, pushing his mail cart past the conference room, noticed the tension through the glass. He didn't know anything about the deal. But he did something simple. He went to the kitchen, made coffee, and quietly brought it in. He poured cups for everyone, his movements calm and unhurried. He didn't say a word about the business problem. He just offered the coffee and left. In that moment, the tension shifted. People took a breath. They looked at each other, really looked, for the first time that day. Who was wiser? By the world standards, Sarah was the intelligent one. But by a much deeper standard, it was David who demonstrated wisdom. Sarah was brilliant but trapped. She was trapped in her own mental constructs, her own analysis, her own need to have answers. She was a prisoner of her own intelligence. David was free. He was free to see the simple human need right in front of him. He was free to respond without any agenda. His simple action was not a strategy. It was the natural expression of a mind that was present. This is the beginning of our exploration. Wisdom is not something you either have or don't have. It is a muscle. It can be strengthened. It is a garden. It can be tended. If this resonates with you, please take a moment now to subscribe to Monk's Temple. It's a simple gesture that tells yourself the cultivation of wisdom is a priority. Now let's return to the path. The word Buddhism comes from Buddha, which means the awakened one. This is crucial. Buddhism is not a system of beliefs about a creator God. It is a description of a psychological process. It is the map of a journey from sleep to awakening. The Buddha was not a god. He was a human being who woke up from the dream of his own conditioned mind and then spent 45 years describing the path so others could wake up too. The heart of his teaching is the Four Noble Truths. These are not truths to be believed. They are diagnoses to be understood. They are realities to be seen directly in your own experience. The first noble truth is the truth of suffering. The word suffering translates the Pali word dukkha, which means a pervasive, subtle dissatisfaction. It is the background hum of unease in so many lives. It is the feeling that something is missing, that happiness is just around the corner but never quite arrives. The Buddha wasn't being pessimistic. He was being a good doctor. You can't treat what you refuse to acknowledge. The second noble truth is the truth of suffering's origin. The origin is craving. Craving for pleasant sensations. Craving to be rid of unpleasant ones. Craving to become something we are not. This craving is not a sin. It's a psychological reflex. Something pleasant arises, and the mind grasps. Something unpleasant arises, and the mind recoils. This pushing and pulling creates tension and suffering. The third noble truth is the truth of cessation. Because suffering has a cause, and because that cause is something we can learn to stop doing, suffering can cease. When grasping stops, the mind returns to its natural, flowing state. In any moment when you are not grasping, there is a taste of peace. The fourth noble truth is the path that leads to cessation. The Eightfold Path covers every aspect of human life. It is not a list of commandments. It is a description of how an awakened human being naturally lives. From the beginning, Buddhism is a psychological system. It diagnoses the human condition. It identifies the cause of distress. It offers a prognosis of health. It provides a treatment plan. And at the center of this entire system is wisdom. Wisdom is what allows us to see clearly. Wisdom is what recognizes craving. Wisdom is what opens the door to cessation. Wisdom is what guides us along the path. Rest in this understanding. You are not broken. You are simply caught in a pattern that can be seen and, in being seen, released. The faculty that does the seeing is wisdom itself. In our first part, we explored the difference between intelligence and wisdom through Sarah and David. We touched on the Four Noble Truths. Now I want to go deeper into what wisdom actually looks like in everyday life. The Buddha gave a clear framework. He talked about two kinds of people. Not good and bad. Not believers and non-believers. But the foolish person and the wise person. This distinction has nothing to do with conventional morality. It has everything to do with psychology. Let me tell you a story. There was once a famous chef, renowned for his exquisite dishes. People traveled for weeks just to taste his bread. His secret was a special yeast culture he had kept alive for 40 years. He knew everything about it. The exact temperature. The precise amount of sugar. He was an expert. But the chef was deeply unhappy. He was lonely. He felt his life had no meaning beyond the next loaf. One day, a young woman came to work as his apprentice. She was just a village girl who needed a job. She knew nothing about yeast. But she noticed the chef's sadness. She saw how he ate alone, how he never smiled. So one afternoon, she brought him tea and sat beside him. She didn't say anything profound. She just sat with him. The chef had a choice. He could have dismissed her. He could have retreated into his expertise. That would have been the reaction of someone trapped by knowledge. But instead, something shifted. He put down his notes, looked at her, and accepted the tea. In that simple act of connection, he experienced a peace that all his culinary achievements had never brought. The chef, for all his knowledge about bread, was the foolish person in this situation. He was dominated by loneliness. The young apprentice, with no formal knowledge, was the wise one. She understood that shared presence nourishes more than food. She acted on that truth and was free from the isolation that bound him. This is what the Buddha meant when he said, accomplishing three things, the foolish are known. Acting unwholesomely by body, speech, and mind. Accomplishing three things, the wise are known. Acting wholesomely by body, speech, and mind. In modern language, unwholesome means reactive. Automatic. Actions born from greed, aversion, or delusion. These are marks of a mind on autopilot. The wise person acts from understanding. There is space between stimulus and response. In that space lies freedom. The Buddha put it even more starkly. He said, whatever fears arise, all such fears arise from the foolish, not from the wise. Whatever dangers arise, all such dangers arise from the foolish, not from the wise. This is radical. Fear and danger are not inherent in the world. They are creations of mind. A tiger in the jungle is not a danger to a wise person who knows how to avoid it. It is simply a tiger. Danger arises from foolish reaction. Panic. Paralysis. The wise person sees clearly, without panic, and acts appropriately. They feel biological fear but aren't controlled by it. They don't spin a calamity story on top of raw sensory data. This leads to one of the Buddha's most profound psychological teachings. The two arrows. Imagine walking through a forest. An archer shoots an arrow. It hits your arm. Physical sensation. Sharp. Painful. This is the first arrow. Raw experience. Everyone feels this. A moment later, a second arrow comes. This one is shot by your own mind. Your mind starts commentary. Why me? This is terrible. I'm going to die. That archer is horrible. I'm so stupid. This second arrow is not the pain. It is the story about pain. Fear. Anger. Blame. Self-pity. Mental suffering piled on top of physical sensation. The foolish person is struck by both arrows. Physical pain, then mental anguish. They grieve. They lament. They become distraught. Pure suffering. The wise person only feels the first arrow. They feel the physical sensation. It's real. But they don't add the second. They don't spin the story. They don't personalize. Sensation as sensation. Unpleasant, but not multiplied by anguish. Bring this modern. First arrow, your boss emails, see me in my office. Physical sensation, stomach flutter. Heart quickens. That's it. First arrow. Second arrow, oh no, what did I do wrong? Is he going to fire me? I'm a failure. By the time you reach his office, you're a wreck, soaked in your own mental creation. The meeting is about something trivial. But you've already lived through catastrophe. Wisdom is feeling the first arrow and stopping. Not reaching for the second. Feeling the flutter, noting it, breathing with it, not letting it become story. This is measurable. This is how Buddhism measures wisdom. By the gap between stimulus and reaction. By how many arrows you allow yourself to be hit with. How many second arrows do you shoot daily? How many stories do you spin on simple sensations? This isn't failure. It's conditioned mind. But seeing it clearly, seeing the second arrow as it arises, is the beginning of freedom. The Buddha described the wise person as standing on solid ground, looking into a pit. They see suffering below but aren't in it. They see second arrows flying but aren't hit. This isn't detachment. It's liberation. Being fully present with what is, without adding mental suffering that turns pain into anguish. In our next part, we'll explore a famous dialogue between a king and a monk about where wisdom resides. For now, sit with the two arrows. Notice when the first arrives. Notice when the mind reaches for the second. In that noticing, you cultivate wisdom. We've been exploring wisdom. In our last part, we sat with the teaching of the two arrows. Now I want to take you back over 2,000 years to a conversation that cuts to the heart of where wisdom resides. The king was Milinda. He ruled Bactria, part of modern Afghanistan and India, around 160 BCE. He was Greek by ancestry, steeped in sharp logic. Intelligent, curious, with a habit of cutting through vague talk with precise questions. The monk was Nagasena, an enlightened sage known for deep wisdom. When King Milinda heard of him, he summoned the monk for discussion. Their dialogue became one of the great records of spiritual inquiry. The king asked Nagasena to explain wisdom's function. Nagasena answered with a metaphor. Wisdom is like a lamp carried into a dark house shuttered for 100 years. The moment the lamp enters, light dispels darkness. Beams, furniture, dusty floor. Everything hidden becomes visible. Darkness doesn't go somewhere else. It's simply vanquished by light. In the same way, wisdom illuminates the mind. Reveals true nature of thoughts, feelings, reactions. Dispels ignorance, the root of all suffering. The king listened. Nodded. Then leaned forward with a burning question. Tell me, Nagasena. This wisdom you speak of. Where does it reside? If I cut open your head, would I find it in your brain? If I cut open your chest, would I find it by your heart? Point to it. Show me wisdom's exact location. A brilliant logical trap. If Nagasena said it's in the brain, the king could ask why not everyone with a brain has it. If he said it's in the heart, he'd be speaking metaphorically, not answering logically. Nagasena sat calmly. With the stillness of a deep lake, he replied, Great king, wisdom resides nowhere. Therefore, it cannot be pointed out as residing in a specific place. The king smiled. The expected answer. Aha! If it resides nowhere, then perhaps it doesn't exist at all. Perhaps wisdom is just an illusion. A word you monks use to confuse people. The other monks stirred. The king's logic was sharp. He had painted Nagasena into a corner. If wisdom has no location, how can it be real? But Nagasena was unshaken. He looked at the king and asked a simple question in return. Your Majesty, tell me. Where does the wind reside? The king opened his mouth. Then stopped. He thought. The wind. You feel it on your face. You see its effects. Trees bending. Dust swirling. Sails filling. But can you point to where the wind lives? Can you open a box and find wind inside? Can you cut a tree and find wind in its rings? It cannot be pointed out, the king finally admitted. His voice quieter now. Nagasena gently pressed. If so, Your Majesty. If it cannot be pointed to, then perhaps there is no wind. Perhaps wind is just an illusion. A word we use to confuse people. Silence filled the hall. The king looked at the monk. The monk looked back. Then King Melinda burst out laughing. A great, genuine laugh of appreciation and surrender. You are indeed very clever. You have shown me that the most powerful things in existence are precisely those that cannot be pinned down or located. This is wisdom's nature. Like wind, it is not a thing. It is a process. A function. The light that reveals, not the bulb producing it. The space between thoughts, not a thought itself. You cannot hold wisdom in your hand. But you can live a life shaped by it. You measure it by its effects. By the peace it brings. By the suffering it ends. By the freedom it creates. This dialogue reveals something essential about the Buddhist approach. Reality cannot always be captured by logic and location. The most real things are often invisible. Love cannot be pointed to. Compassion cannot be dissected. Awareness cannot be weighed. Yet they shape human experience more than any physical object. The king wanted to locate wisdom like locating a book on a shelf. But wisdom doesn't work that way. It's not an object to possess. It's a capacity to be cultivated. Not something you have. Something you do. Something you become. Think about your own mind. Can you point to where your sense of humor resides? Can you locate your capacity for kindness? These qualities aren't stored in specific brain regions like files in a cabinet. They emerge from the whole. From how everything works together. From the space between neurons as much as the neurons themselves. Wisdom is the same. It emerges when conditions are right. When ignorance is dispelled. When the mind is calm. When attention is trained. You can't grab it. But you can create conditions for it to arise. Like you can't grab the wind, but you can raise a sail. Nagasena's lamp metaphor is perfect. The lamp doesn't create the furniture. It reveals what was already there. Wisdom doesn't create truth. It reveals what was always true, hidden by darkness. When the lamp of wisdom enters the dark house of the mind, you see things as they actually are. Not as you hoped. Not as you feared. Just as they are. This seeing is liberating because most suffering comes from not seeing clearly. From mistaking the temporary for permanent. The unsatisfactory for satisfying. The not-self for self. When wisdom illuminates, these mistakes dissolve. The darkness of ignorance simply cannot coexist with the light of understanding. In our next part, we'll explore the psychological profile of the wise person. How they navigate pleasure and pain. How they handle emotional suffering. The Buddha described it with remarkable precision. For now, sit with King Milinda's question. Where does your wisdom reside? Don't answer with words. Just notice. When wisdom arises, what conditions preceded it? What does it feel like? You may find it's like the wind. You can't hold it. But you can certainly feel it. We've been exploring wisdom from many angles. The two arrows. The dialogue between King Milinda and Nagasena. Now I want to look at something deeply practical. The psychological profile of the wise person. How do they actually experience life? How do they handle pleasure and pain? Let me tell you a story about two gardeners. They lived in neighboring villages, each responsible for a public garden. The first gardener was passionate about his work. He loved his garden intensely. He spent hours admiring flowers, touching petals, celebrating each bloom. His garden brought him tremendous pleasure. The second gardener also tended his garden well. He watered, pruned, and weeded. But he didn't cling emotionally. He appreciated beauty without possessing it. He understood flowers bloom and fade. That's their nature. Summer came. A terrible drought struck both villages. Despite their best efforts, gardens withered. Flowers died. Plants turned brown. The first gardener was devastated. He wept. He couldn't eat. He walked through his dead garden moaning, "My flowers. My beautiful flowers." Two arrows struck him. The first arrow was plants dying. The second arrow was his joy dying, his identity dying. He suffered immensely. The second gardener looked at his withered garden. He felt sadness. A gentle pang of loss. First arrow. Natural response to something beautiful ending. But he didn't shoot the second arrow. He didn't tell a disaster story. He observed impermanence written in dry soil and brown leaves. Days later, he planned what to plant when rains returned. His peace wasn't dependent on perfect garden. It depended on understanding reality. This is what the Buddha taught about sensations. When foolish people experience physical pain, they grieve, lament, become distraught. They add mental suffering to physical suffering. The Buddha compared this to falling into an abyss with no safe foothold. When wise people experience physical pain, they don't grieve or lament. They feel physical sensation but not mental anguish. The Buddha said such a person stands on solid ground at the abyss edge. They see suffering below but aren't in it. The Buddha used the two arrows image. But he also described what happens inside each mind. When foolish feel emotional pain, they feel anger. Resentment arises and grows. They seek escape through sensual pleasures because they know no other escape. They don't understand these feelings. So they remain bound. When wise feel emotional pain, they don't feel anger. Resentment doesn't arise. They find escape through understanding. They see the feeling clearly. Know its origin. Know its cessation. Know the path beyond it. So they aren't bound. Think about your own life. Someone criticizes you. What happens? First arrow, words enter ears. Slight chest tightening. That's all. Second arrow, story begins. How dare they? They're wrong. I'll prove it. Hours later, you're still fighting mental battles. Still shooting arrows. The wise person hears criticism. Feels chest tighten. Notes it. Breathes. Considers if truth exists in words. If yes, learn. If no, let go. One arrow. Not two. The Buddha distinguished two kinds of people based on present moment relationship. A celestial being once asked, why do those living simply in forest, eating one meal daily, have such serene complexions? They glow while city dwellers look weary. The Buddha answered with verses holding well-being's secret. They do not grieve over the past. They do not yearn for the future. They maintain themselves with the present. That is why their complexion is splendid. Because of yearning for future, because of grieving over past, the fools dry up and wither away, like green reeds cut from stalk. This is happiness psychology in 4 lines. We suffer living in 2 places that don't exist. Past, which is gone. Future, which hasn't arrived. Both just thoughts. Mental constructions. Not reality. The wise person lives in the only real place. Present moment. Not prisoners of memory. Not hostages to anticipation. Here. Now. Fully alive. Like reed rooted in moist earth, while fool, disconnected from now, is dry stalk blowing wind. Think about genuine happiness moments. Were you thinking about past? Worrying about future? No. You were completely absorbed. Playing with child. Watching sunset. Deep conversation. That moment, you were wise. Present. The goal is making this default state. The Buddha described another difference. The wise prefer silence like vast sea. Like pond full to brim, perfectly still. The foolish are noisy like mountain stream, shallow and loud. Like half-empty jar sloshing with every movement. What's empty shouts loud. The fool, like jar half filled with water. What's full remains quiet. The wise are like full, silent pond. The fool shouts convincing themselves they're real. Important. Opinions matter. The wise are silent because they are real. Don't need to prove existence. Full of peace from understanding. This inner silence isn't dull emptiness. It's vibrant, alert presence. Imagine master diamond cutter before rough stone worth fortune. Amateur picks it up, immediately talks. I think I'll cut this way. Maybe that way. This is tricky. Noisy. Full of speculation. The master sits silent. Holds stone. Looks. Turns slowly in light. Not thinking about stone. Becoming one with it. Seeing internal structure. Lines of cleavage. Hidden form. All experience not as chatter, but deep intuitive knowing. Then one swift, silent tap. Stone splits perfectly. Revealing dazzling gem within. Silence wasn't empty. It was full of wisdom. This is what we're cultivating. Ability to be with experience without noisy commentary. To see anger not as my anger making me bad, but simply as anger. Passing energy. Guest in mind. To see fear not as catastrophe, but as chest tightness. Sensation arising. Sensation passing. In our next part, we'll explore how wisdom connects to Buddhism's most profound teaching. Dependent origination. The causation chain creating suffering moment by moment. For now, sit with these differences. Are you noisy stream or silent pond? Do you grieve past or yearn future? Notice without judgment. This noticing is wisdom's first whisper. We've been exploring the psychological profile of the wise person. How they handle pleasure and pain differently. Now I want to take you into the deepest teaching of the Buddha. The teaching that explains exactly how suffering is created moment by moment. It's called dependent origination. This teaching can seem complicated. 12 links in a chain. But it's actually the most practical thing you'll ever encounter. It's the mechanics of your own mind. The factory where suffering is manufactured. Let me tell you a story that brings this to life. A man named Alex is walking down a city street. He just got off a stressful phone call with his mother. There's a background hum of irritation. He's not fully aware of it. He's on autopilot. This background unawareness is what the Buddha called ignorance. Not stupidity. Just not seeing clearly what's happening inside. Because of this ignorance, his mind starts churning. I need a drink. I need to relax. These are mental formations. Thoughts and urges arising from not seeing clearly. These formations shape his consciousness. His awareness now narrows. Scans the street for a bar. His consciousness is colored by craving. This scanning creates his experienced world. Name and form. The street is form. The concept, bar, he superimposes on shops his name. His six senses activate. Eyes looking. Ears listening for clinking glasses. Mind imagining beer taste. An object appears. A neon sign in a window. Contact. Eye meets form. Pleasant feeling arises. Recognition. Ah, a bar. Because ignorance started this whole process, he automatically reacts to pleasant feeling with craving. I want that. Craving intensifies into clinging. He's no longer just wanting a drink. He's attached to the idea of sitting at that bar. Having that beer. He crosses the street. Pace quickens. Clinging powers becoming. His whole identity orients toward this action. He's no longer just Alex. He's Alex about to have a beer. Becoming leads to birth. He pushes open the door. Alex in the bar is born in that moment. And with birth comes aging and death. His time in bar will begin, age moment by moment, end. He'll eventually leave. With leaving comes potential sorrow, lamentation, pain. Especially if craving wasn't satisfied. Or if he drinks too much and feels terrible tomorrow. This entire chain, from stressful call to hangover, happened in under an hour. This is the factory of suffering running on autopilot. Now imagine a different scenario. Same Alex. Same stressful call. Same street. This time, he's practicing mindfulness. He's aware of his irritation. Notes it. Ah, this is stress. This awareness is wisdom's beginning. The light in the dark room. He still sees the neon sign. Pleasant feeling still arises. But because wisdom's light is present, there's a gap. He sees pleasant feeling as just feeling. Sees thought, I want a drink, as just thought. He's no longer on autopilot. This is the craving link being seen before it can take over. In that gap, he has choice. Let craving pull him into bar, or watch craving arise and pass. He might breathe. Say silently, I see you, craving. You're just a guest. Then simply continue walking. Because craving wasn't fueled, clinging doesn't happen. Becoming doesn't happen. Birth doesn't happen. The entire suffering mass that would have been his evening ceases before it starts. He's short-circuited the whole chain. Used wisdom to prevent suffering creation. This is how we measure wisdom. By how often we create that gap. How often we see craving before it becomes clinging. Feel first arrow and stop. Refuse to shoot second. The Buddha expressed this through two formulas. One for suffering arising. One for suffering ceasing. When this exists, that exists. With this arising, that arises. Ignorance leads to formations. Formations lead to consciousness. Consciousness to name and form. Name and form to six senses. Six senses to contact. Contact to feeling. Feeling to craving. Craving to clinging. Clinging to becoming. Becoming to birth. Birth to aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, despair. This whole mass of suffering arises. But there's another formula. When this doesn't exist, that doesn't exist. With this cessation, that ceases. When ignorance ceases, formations cease. Formations cease, consciousness ceases. Consciousness ceases, name and form ceases. Name and form ceases, six senses cease. Six senses cease, contact ceases. Contact ceases, feeling ceases. Feeling ceases, craving ceases. Craving ceases, clinging ceases. Clinging ceases, becoming ceases. Becoming ceases, birth ceases. Birth ceases, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, despair cease. This whole mass of suffering ceases. This isn't philosophy. It's psychology. It's description of what happens in your mind hundreds of times daily. Every time you crave something, you're reenacting the first formula. Every time you see clearly and let go, you're enacting the second. The practitioner with wisdom knows both formulas. Maintains precepts. Achieves calm mind. When six senses contact six objects, they don't cling to desirable or undesirable. They dwell mindfully. Body observed. Mind boundless. They truly understand mind's liberation. Through this, all unwholesome states cease. Think about your own chain reactions. Someone says something slightly critical. Contact. Feeling unpleasant. Craving to make them wrong arises. Clinging to being right takes over. Becoming the person who will prove them wrong. Birth of argument. aging and death of relationship harmony. All from one moment of unawareness. Now imagine same situation with awareness. Critical words. Contact. Unpleasant feeling. Noticed. Breathe with. Craving seen as craving. Let go. No clinging. No becoming. No argument. Relationship preserved. All from one moment of awareness. This is dependent origination in daily life. Not ancient theory. Living reality. Operating in you right now. In our next part, we'll explore how wisdom transforms our relationship to everything. The 5 aggregates. The objects we mistake for self. But for now, watch your own chain reactions. Notice when contact leads to craving. Notice when craving leads to clinging. Just notice. In noticing, the chain weakens. In noticing, wisdom grows. We've been exploring dependent origination. The chain of causation that creates suffering moment by moment. Now I want to look at what wisdom actually does with this understanding. How it transforms our relationship to everything we call self. The Buddha analyzed the sense of self into 5 categories. 5 aggregates. Form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. These 5 cover everything we experience. Everything we might cling to as me or mine. Form is the physical body. The flesh and bones. The breath in your lungs. The sensations in your toes. Feeling is the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral tone of every experience. Perception is the recognition that labels things. This is a tree. This is a sound. This is my mother. Mental formations are thoughts, intentions, emotions, desires. Consciousness is the raw awareness that knows all these. Together, they create the illusion of a solid, permanent self. But the Buddha invites us to look closer. To use wisdom and see they're not solid at all. Let me tell you a story about a woman who built sandcastles on the beach every day. She was an artist. Her castles were intricate. Towers, walls, moats. She loved them dearly. She would spend hours perfecting each detail. And every evening, the tide would come in and wash them away. Every morning, she would return and build again. One day, a child asked her, "Doesn't it make you sad? All that work, gone every night?" The woman smiled. At first, yes. I cried every evening. I cursed the sea. I tried building further from the water. But the tide always reached them eventually. Then one day, I realized something. The castle was never meant to last. Its beauty was in its temporary existence. The joy was in the building, not in the possessing. Now I watch the tide take my work, and I feel gratitude. Gratitude for the hours of creation. Gratitude even for the waves that wash it clean for tomorrow's castle. This woman discovered wisdom about her sandcastles. She stopped clinging to form. She found freedom in impermanence. The Buddha said we must do this with everything. With our bodies. With our feelings. With our perceptions. With our thoughts. With our consciousness itself. We must see each clearly. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not myself. Not as a philosophy to believe. As a truth to see directly. When you see your body clearly, you notice it's constantly changing. Cells dying and being replaced. Skin aging. Hair growing. Nothing solid. Nothing permanent. How can this be truly yours? You're just renting it from the elements for a few decades. When you see feelings clearly, you notice their weather patterns. Arising and passing. Joy comes. Joy goes. Sadness comes. Sadness goes. None last. None define you. How can a passing cloud be your permanent identity? When you see perceptions clearly, you notice their labels. Useful conventions. But a tree is only a tree because we agree to call it that. In another language, it's a different word. The thing itself is beyond all labels. When you see mental formations clearly, you notice thoughts arise from conditions. Not from a thinker. A thought appears like a bubble in water. You don't claim ownership of every bubble. Why claim ownership of every thought? When you see consciousness clearly, you notice it's not a thing. It's a process. A stream. Each moment of awareness arises and passes, replaced by the next. No permanent witness behind it all. Just witnessing happening. This is not nihilism. It's liberation. The Buddha compared it to a raft. You build a raft to cross a river. When you reach the other side, you don't carry the raft on your head. You leave it on the bank. You're free. The aggregates are the raft. Useful for navigating life. But not to be carried as me and mine. Another story. A man owned a beautiful orchard. He loved his trees. He knew each one. Their shapes. Their fruit. Their history. One year, a blight came. Many trees died. The man grieved deeply. He couldn't accept it. He kept visiting the dead trees, wishing them alive. A wise neighbor said, "You loved your trees. But did you love them as possessions to keep forever? Or did you love them as living beings, whose life includes death?" The man understood. His love had been mixed with possessiveness. With denial of reality. True love for his trees meant accepting their full nature. Including impermanence. The Buddha's teaching on not-self is like this. It's not saying you don't exist. It's saying the way you exist is not the way you think. You're a process, not a thing. A river, not a statue. And when you see this, you stop clinging to a static self that doesn't exist. You relax into the flow of life. This is what wisdom does. It sees through the illusion. And in seeing through, it liberates. The Buddha put it in verses that have echoed for millennia. All formations are impermanent. With wisdom, one sees this. Disenchantment with suffering. This indeed is the path to purity. All formations are painful. With wisdom, one sees this. Disenchantment with suffering. This indeed is the path to purity. All things are not self. With wisdom, one sees this. Disenchantment with suffering. This indeed is the path to purity. Disenchantment here doesn't mean depression. It means no longer being enchanted. No longer under the spell. When the child sees the toy is just plastic, they don't cry when it's taken. They're free to find deeper joy. In our next part, we'll explore what this freedom actually feels like. The taste of liberation. But for now, sit with the aggregates. Notice your body. Your feelings. Your thoughts. Are they solid and permanent? Or are they flowing, changing, alive? Just notice. In noticing, wisdom grows. We've been exploring the 5 aggregates. Form, feeling, perception, formations, consciousness. And how wisdom sees through the illusion of a solid self. Now I want to explore what this freedom actually feels like. The taste of liberation. Not as a concept, but as a living experience. Let me tell you a story about a musician. She was a pianist, classically trained. For years, she performed on stage. But every performance was agony. She was terrified of making mistakes. She would obsess over every note beforehand. During performances, she was trapped in her own head. Judging. Criticizing. Worrying what the audience thought. Music, which should have been joy, was suffering. One day, her teacher gave her strange advice. For your next recital, don't practice. Don't prepare. Just sit at the piano and play whatever comes. She was horrified. But she trusted her teacher. The night of the recital, she walked on stage with no preparation. She sat at the piano. Her hands touched the keys. And for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking. She was just playing. The music flowed through her, not from her. Mistakes happened. She didn't care. The audience didn't care. They felt something real. Something alive. Afterward, she said, I didn't play the music. The music played me. And it was the most free I've ever felt. This is a taste of liberation. The dropping of the self that tries so hard. The self that worries. The self that compares. The self that wants to be perfect. When that self steps aside, what's left? Just the music. Just the moment. Just life living itself through you. The Buddha described this freedom as disenchantment leading to dispassion leading to liberation. Disenchantment doesn't mean hating the world. It means the spell is broken. You no longer believe the magic trick. You see the wires. The world still appears, but you're not fooled. Imagine watching a movie, completely absorbed. You forget you're in a theater. You cry when the character dies. You cheer when they succeed. Then someone turns the lights on. You see the screen. You see the projector. You see other people in their seats. The movie continues, but you're no longer trapped in it. You can still appreciate it. But you're free. This is what wisdom does. It turns the lights on. You still experience life. Joy arises. You appreciate it. Pain arises. You feel it. But you're not trapped. You know it's a passing show. Not your ultimate identity. Another story. A woman spent decades collecting rare books. Her library was legendary. She knew every volume intimately. Their smell, their texture, their history. One day, a flood destroyed her entire collection. Her first response was grief. Deep, overwhelming grief. But then something unexpected happened. As she stood in the ruins of her library, surrounded by damaged books, she had a moment of clarity. She realized she had spent her life possessing books, but never truly reading them. She knew them as objects, not as wisdom. The flood had taken her possessions, but not her capacity to learn. In that moment, she felt something she had never felt before. Freedom. She started reading differently after that. Not collecting. Not owning. Just reading. One book at a time. Absorbing its essence. Then letting it go. She said, "I spent 40 years filling my shelves. Now I spend my time filling myself. And nothing can flood that." This is disenchantment transforming into liberation. The attachment to books was released. The love of learning remained. Stronger than ever. The Buddha said the liberated person knows three things with certainty. Birth is ended. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no return to this state again. This doesn't necessarily mean literal rebirth, though it can. In psychological terms, it means the patterns that kept you trapped are finished. The same old reactions don't arise. The same old suffering doesn't return. You've seen through it. You're free in this very life. Think of someone who spent years in an abusive relationship. They finally leave. But for years after, they still carry the patterns. Flinching at loud voices. Expecting criticism. The relationship ended, but its suffering continues. Then one day, after much healing, they realized they didn't flinch. They didn't expect criticism. The pattern is gone. That's a taste of birth ended. That particular suffering will never be born again. Wisdom works like this in all areas. It doesn't just manage suffering. It uproots it. So it can't grow back. The Buddha described three eyes. The eye of flesh. Physical sight. The divine eye. Seeing beyond normal perception. And the supreme eye of wisdom. This eye sees things as they truly are. He said, "From here wisdom arises." The eye of wisdom is supreme. Whoever realizes this eye is liberated from all suffering. This eye doesn't see something new. It sees the same things differently. It sees impermanence in what seemed permanent. Sees suffering in what seemed satisfying. Sees not self in what seemed like self. And this seeing transforms everything. In our next part, we'll explore how all these teachings come together in daily life. How wisdom becomes not something you practice, but something you are. For now, sit with this question. What would it feel like to be free from one of your persistent patterns? Just imagine it. Feel it. That taste is wisdom calling you home. We've been exploring the taste of liberation. What it feels like when wisdom uproots suffering. Now I want to bring all these teachings together. To show how wisdom becomes not something you practice, but something you are. How it transforms daily life from the inside out. Let me tell you a story about a potter and a king. There was once a king obsessed with owning the most beautiful things. His palace overflowed with treasures from around the world. Gold, silk, jewels, art. Nothing satisfied him for long. He always wanted more. One day, he heard of a potter who lived in a small village at the edge of his kingdom. This potter, it was said, could create pots of such sublime beauty they seemed to hold light within them. The king, of course, had to have one. He sent messengers to the village. They returned with a simple clay pot. The king was furious. "This is just a pot. Brown and plain. What's so special about it?" The messengers were confused. They had seen the potter's work. It was extraordinary. But the king only saw clay. The king decided to go himself. He traveled to the village and found the potter at his wheel. The king watched, expecting magic. The potter took ordinary clay, placed it on the wheel, and began to work. His hands were gentle, precise, patient. He didn't force the clay. He guided it, working with its nature. As the king watched, a form emerged from spinning mud. A simple bowl. But as the potter worked, the king saw something. He saw the potter's complete attention. His absence of self. His perfect harmony with the material. The bowl created was not just an object. It was a manifestation of the potter's peaceful, focused mind. The king understood. Beauty was never in the clay. It was in the wisdom shaping it. A foolish potter, full of ego and impatience, would create clumsy, lopsided pots, no matter how fine the clay. A wise potter, empty of self and full of presence, could turn humblest mud into treasure. Our lives are the clay. Every moment, we're at the wheel. Thoughts, words, actions are our hands. If we're foolish, driven by greed, hatred, delusion, our lives become clumsy, lopsided, full of stress. If we're wise, present, aware, understanding, our lives become vessels of peace. Not perfect lives, free from storms. But lives shaped by such deep understanding that they can hold both joy and sorrow without leaking suffering. This is the promise of the path. Not becoming someone else. Waking up to who you already are beneath the noise. Learning to live with the gap between stimulus and response. Finding that in that gap lies your freedom. Another story. Two merchants traveled together through desert. Their camels carried goods to sell at distant market. The first merchant constantly worried. What if bandits attack? What if camels get sick? What if market prices fall? He spent entire journey anxious, unable to enjoy stars at night or companionship during day. The second merchant also prepared. Checked supplies. Planned route. But when preparations were done, he relaxed. At night, he gazed at stars. During day, he talked with companion. He faced same dangers as first merchant. But he wasn't consumed by them. One night, bandits did attack. Both merchants lost goods. First merchant wailed, "I knew it. I knew this would happen. My life is ruined." Second merchant felt loss. First arrow. But then he thought, "I have my life. My companion is safe." We'll find way home. He didn't add second arrow. They returned to their village. First merchant remained bitter for years. If only bandits hadn't come. If only I'd taken different route. He lived in past, suffering endlessly. Second merchant started new business. Small at first. Grew slowly. Didn't fear future. Didn't regret past. Lived in present, doing what he could with what he had. Years later, they met again. First merchant was poor, alone, bitter. Second merchant was prosperous, surrounded by family, peaceful. Same bandit attack. Same loss. Two completely different lives. The difference wasn't circumstances. The difference was wisdom. The Buddha said, all experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Not in magical sense. In psychological sense. Your experience of life isn't determined by events. It's determined by how your mind relates to events. Same rain can bring farmer joy and picnicker disappointment. Rain is just rain. The joy and disappointment come from mind. This is why wisdom matters. Not to control external world. To free your internal world. So you can face whatever comes without being destroyed by it. So you can lose everything and still have yourself. So you can gain everything and not lose yourself. In our final part, we'll bring this long journey to close. We'll return to where we began. The simple act of noticing. And see how that noticing, cultivated over time, becomes the most powerful force in your life. But for now, sit with these stories. Feel into them. Your life is clay. Your hands are on the wheel. What are you creating? We've traveled far together. From the story of Sarah and David to the dialogue between King Melinda and Nagasena. From the two arrows to dependent origination. From the five aggregates to the potter shaping clay. Now we arrive at the end of our long exploration. But every ending is also a beginning. Let me tell you one final story. A young woman came to a meditation master. She had studied all the teachings. Read every scripture. She could recite the Four Noble Truths in Pali. She knew dependent origination backwards and forwards. But she was still suffering. Still anxious. Still unhappy. She said to the master, I know everything about the path. Why am I not free? The master didn't answer with words. He handed her a cup of tea. Then he kept pouring. Tea overflowed the cup. Spilled onto her hands. She jumped back. What are you doing? The cup is full. The master smiled. Exactly. You come to me with your cup full of knowledge. How can I pour wisdom into a cup that has no space? Empty your cup. Then we can begin. This is our final teaching. All the concepts we've explored are just maps. The map is not the territory. All the stories are just pointers. The finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. Wisdom is not something to add to your collection. It's not another belief to hold. It's not a philosophy to defend. Wisdom is the space you create when you stop filling your cup. When you stop grasping. When you stop averting. When you simply rest in awareness of what is. The Buddha said wisdom is knowing things as they truly are. Not as you want them to be. Not as you fear they might be. Just as they are. This knowing is not intellectual. It's experiential. Direct. Intimate. You can know about water forever. Read every book. Study every scientific paper. But you will never know water until you drink. The teachings are invitations to drink. Not things to collect. So as we end this long journey, I invite you to do one simple thing. Return to the beginning. Notice your breath. Just as you did in part 1. Is it different now? Have you changed? Or have you simply remembered something you always knew? The path is not about getting somewhere new. It's about coming home to where you've always been. The peace you seek is not in the next moment. It's in this one. The wisdom you search for is not in ancient texts. It's in your own direct experience. Right here. Right now. The Buddha's final words were, all conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence. Not, believe in me. Not, worship me. But, strive on. The path is yours. The work is yours. The freedom is yours. Thank you for spending this time at Monk's Temple. May you go from this place and, in the simple moments of your day, remember to look for the second arrow and choose not to shoot it. May you find the silent, full pond within your own heart. May you know the freedom that comes from seeing clearly. The gate is wide open. Walk through.